Let's look at booleans again. Um, this is basically what not to do. I would say that you should try to avoid doing the following examples at all cost, but know that PHP does do some rather interesting conversions for you. So these are called Truthy Booleans. So for example, you can pass a number like that if one, say echo, he was number one. And then if we switch over here and run it, it will actually display he was number one. How? Because PHP sees this as a truthy variable. Let's try something else. So we can say if, let's try like -5. And we can say echo, he was also number one. And if we go over here and run it, we can see that it actually also displays he was also number one. So any kind of integer value, with the exception of 0. So if 0, you can say echo, was he number one? This should not display because 0 is not considered a truthy value, it's considered falsy. So if we run it, nothing happens. Alright, let's take a look at some other ones. And by the way, I know I just switched from curly braces to no curly braces. You might be familiar with this in Java syntax where if you just have one statement underneath, you don't have to use curly braces. This is just to save some space. Alright, let's continue on. So what are some of the truthy variables? So you could, let's just type in this is a truthy expression, not variable. So let's look at some of the truthy expressions. So if you pass an empty string, and I'm going to put some of this up here, empty strings are considered falsy. And as a matter of fact, let's actually introduce you to something new. Let's introduce you to var dump. Var dump just displays certain things on the screen. It shows the type, and it'll show whatever we're looking at. So this will make more sense. So we're going to cast this next expression to a Boolean type, right? So all we want to see is this right here, true or false. So if we var dump an empty string, it would just say string, but if we cast it to Boolean, like it's being done right here in the if statement, it should say true or false. So if we go back and refresh, we're going to get this little line that says blah, 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 Boolean false. So an empty string is not considered true, but it does evaluate to false. So let's look at, we already looked at, some integer values like 1, -5, and 0. What about if we do a string that's not empty? So let's pass something like that. And if we rerun this, well, guess what? This actually evaluates the Boolean true. So a non-empty string is considered truthy. Alright, let's do something else. And this time, what we're going to do is we're actually going to pass the string false. So what do you think will happen right now? That's actually considered true. So any kind of string, it doesn't matter what's in here, will be considered truthy. All right, I know we haven't covered arrays yet, but let's look at arrays. So arrays are just ways to store multiple items together. So we can have, like for example, an array called names. And inside this array, we're going to have a few names, like Dino, Frank, Susan, with an S. And yeah, so right now we have an array with names, and there are 3 names in here. So we can access these names by saying echo names and then the index location, which in this case is 0, 1, and 2. We'll cover arrays in more detail a little bit later on. But we can say like, oh, access or name 0, and if we echo this out, this will display Nino. But we don't care about that. All we want to do is just pass an empty array right now and see if it's truthy or not. So if we refresh this page, this empty array will be displayed as false. So it is not truthy. How about an array that's not empty, like for example, our names array? Let's go ahead and see what that looks like. That is actually truthy. So as you can see, I mean, there's all kinds of weird stuff that can happen. You can, where this starts getting a little bit tricky is, for example, if you have this names right here, so you can say if names, right, echo, this is a truthy statement. And if we refresh it, guess what? It pops up, this is a truthy statement. So even though we have an array right here, and this has absolutely nothing to do with Booleans, if you pass it inside an if statement, it will convert it to either truthy or not. So like I said earlier, I would just avoid this at all costs, but just know that PHP does do some of these weird conversions for you. So every single language is going to have its little quirks. Some people really like this. I personally don't. So my advice is just don't use it, and just make sure that certain things are explicitly stated. So if, for example, you wanted to check whether names is empty or not, then you can say something like if count names is greater than 0, and that will explicitly say this is a true statement because you're counting the number of elements inside the array. Is it greater than 0? Yes. So then if we refresh this, we should get this is a true statement. So this is how you explicitly do some of this stuff. Some people like the shorthand syntax, which, like I said, I personally don't.